Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing today? This is 98.5 WNUW LP Aston. My name is Joe Tusio, and we got a lot to get to today. In the sports world, a lot went down this weekend, including the Pro Bowl, the Senior Bowl, NHL All-Star Game. But before I get to that, there's just some quick news that has been going on the past few days, including the impending retirement of Calvin Johnson, the man who over the last 8 or 9 years was seen as maybe being the best wide receiver in the NFL, and it's not set in stone yet. He may come back, but it looks like he may be leaning towards retiring, that the Detroit Lions may not have their star wide receiver anymore. And why this is so important is because Calvin Johnson, to me, was one of those receivers that is a 1 in a million player. J.J. Watt is a 1 in a million player. Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, these guys are 1 in a million players. These are guys that they don't come around in this league every year. Calvin Johnson set the tone for what the NFL is in terms of the wide receiving spot. The guy had rare size combined with speed. There are other wide receivers out there that were 6'4", that had 230 plus pound frames, that had skill sets that were in a way similar to his. But no wide receiver, at least that I can think of, that is currently in the league has the same skill set plus size and ability that he has that we've seen in a long time. I mean, the guy was built like a tight end, probably ran a 3.4 or close to that, and could take over a game. And one of the amazing things was that he did it on a team that was not a Super Bowl contending team. The Lions, over the last, let's say, 10 years, they may have gotten a playoff spot here and there, but they were not a annual playoff type of team that every year they get there, and he's that guy that contributes to them being a playoff team. But with that being said, he was the Detroit Lions. Stafford's there. He's not really the star, though. Sue was there. Sue was maybe seen as the defensive star, but when you think of the Detroit Lions, at least this Detroit Lions team, Calvin Johnson was the guy. Now, this decision, is it because he isn't winning? Is it because he just wants to hang him up? Does he think maybe his body can't take the hits anymore? Maybe he's getting hurt too much? This past year wasn't his best year. Is it just a decision that he made where he just wants to walk away from the game before he gets hurt bad in a way that he may not be able to come back from? No one really knows. And next week he might come back and say that he wants to come back. Steve Smith was kind of that way. He didn't know if he was going to come back, and then he announced he was coming back for another year. So maybe the Lions can persuade him to say, hey, give it one more run, give us one more year. We're going to go all in this year, and if it doesn't work out, then you can walk away. But it's just, it's crazy how this is the second Lions player that retired early in his career. So I don't know if there's going to be another guy on that team that's going to do that 20, 30 years down the road. But it's just crazy to see one of the best stars in this league retire at a young age, and a guy that's still probably in his prime that has a good 5-6 good years left in him. Now, how this kind of sways into another point that some news came out the last couple of days as well was that former Rams offensive coordinator Mike Martz was not happy with the fact that T.O., the guy that whenever he's playing, he's the media attention guy, that he's going to grab the attention, and he's the guy that people are going to look at to see what is he going to do this time. Not necessarily bad things, but he wasn't always seen as maybe being the best character. But T.O. was a Hall of Fame finalist ahead of both St. Louis Rams greats, Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt. And Mike Martz maybe didn't like that. And maybe it was a homer type of thing where maybe he wanted those two guys in before T.O. because he coached them. So his relationships with them are stronger, a lot stronger at this point. But when you look at the careers that all three of those guys had, all three of them are probably going to be Hall of Fame players. But I don't see how you can make an argument for Isaac Bruce or Torrey Holt to make it into the Hall of Fame before T.O. would. T.O., I mean, when you look at his stats, if you break it down between T.O., Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, receiving yards career-wise, T.O. is second all-time. Only one wide receiver has more receiving yards than he does. Now, everybody knows who that is, Jerry Rice. Isaac Bruce is 4th. Torrey Holt is 14th. So if you're going by receiving yards, I don't see an argument there. Maybe they have more receptions than T.O. Wrong. All-time T.O. is 6th. Isaac Bruce is 9th, and Torrey Holt is 19th. Still, very good numbers, but not better than what Terrell Owens did. Maybe they have more touchdowns than T.O. No. T.O. is 3rd all-time in touchdowns receiving. Isaac Bruce is 12th, and Torrey Holt is tied for 33rd. So when you look at the numbers side of it, which I think is the majority reason of why a guy would be a Hall of Fame player, Terrell Owens is, to me, the lock over those three guys. I get it if maybe Holt was above T.O. in receptions or Isaac Bruce had more touchdowns than him. But T.O., over those three stats, which by a wide receiving standpoint are the three most important stats that anybody should look at, he's beat them. All three categories. T.O. is top 10 in all three stats, and in 2 of them, he's top 3 all time. With a guy like Jerry Rice. Now, I'm not saying T.O. is Jerry Rice, but that's like arguing Jerry Rice or Isaac Bruce. Now, like I just said, Jerry Rice is by far the best wide receiver of all time, hands down. I'm not going to argue that, and T.O. is not on his level. But T.O. stat-wise is way better than what Bruce or what Holt did. Now, maybe some people want to argue, well, Terrell Owens wasn't the best teammate. He was on multiple teams. Teams just wanted to get rid of him because they didn't like his on or off the field stuff. Maybe he wasn't a good teammate. Maybe some locker room stuff went down that maybe people didn't like. I don't know about you, because everybody's opinion is their own opinion. But to me, the Hall of Fame is about what you did on the field. Now, that's not saying anybody can get into the Hall of Fame regardless of what they've done on or off the field. A guy can put up astronomical numbers, but if he did something off the field that was just terrible, you're going to take that into consideration, of course. But if a guy may just be a bad teammate, or maybe he wasn't seen through the media's eyes as being a great person, that doesn't mean that he shouldn't get a Hall of Fame nod. It's ridiculous to me. And I understand if maybe your teammate wasn't as good as T.O. was, but you feel for him because he's your friend. I get that. To me, the Hall of Fame is about what you've done on the field. Period. If the Hall of Fame is about which guy was the nicest player, which guy was the best teammate, Tebow would probably be a first ballot guy then. And I don't think that's going to happen. Unless he comes out for the next 10 years and puts up 5,000 yards passing every single year, which I do not see happening. Terrell Owens deserves the nod over those two guys, at least right now. If I had to pick these three guys right now, T.O. is the number one guy. The clear-cut number one guy. And that brings into the conversation of, is Calvin Johnson a Hall of Fame type of guy? And the answer has to be yes. Because of how rare of a talent he is, plus the numbers he's put up. I saw somewhere he was one of the fastest wide receivers ever to get to a certain amount of career yardage. One of the fastest ever to do it. And he wasn't on a Super Bowl team. It's not like he was on a team that won a Super Bowl every single year. Jerry Rice had a Hall of Fame quarterback. That doesn't take anything away from what Jerry Rice did. But Stafford right now, I don't think is a Hall of Fame player. So what Calvin Johnson did with that team and how much media he brought to that team in a positive way, and a character and leader he was for that team, he deserves consideration for the Hall of Fame soon. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get in year one. I don't think he is. It's probably going to be a couple years because a lot of guys that are deserving of a Hall of Fame nod wait a couple years, unless you're the undeniable talent, Brady, Manning, Favre. Those guys are going to be first ballot guys. So, overall, it's just interesting to see how everything is put into perspective in some way, that Johnson is retired soon, potentially, if he decides to go forward with that choice. And then at the same time, does T.O. deserve to get the Hall of Fame nod ahead of Isaac Bruce or Torrey Holt or some other guys? Now, that's just some quick news that has been going on the past couple days. But on to the important stuff at hand. The stuff that went down this weekend, including the NHL All-Star Game, but more importantly, the Pro Bowl and the Senior Bowl. Not to say that the NHL All-Star Game wasn't great, because I was one of the few people that did not particularly want to see John Scott play. But when he played, it was actually fun to see him play. And it was fun to see how the fans appreciated him playing there. And he played pretty well. I didn't expect him to score, but he scored twice. It was fun to see him play. He's a huge player. The players have just amount of respect for him, even though he's not a star player. The All-Star Game is always fun. They did the 3-on-3, which was insane because the amount of ice, the amount of space that they had could just create so many combinations that could work out on the ice. And they could have probably scored 10 goals apiece, but it was a defensive matchup every single game. Overall, it was just a really fun experience to watch, and the NHL All-Star Game is always something that I like to watch. Now, on to the Pro Bowl, something that fans maybe don't really have appeal for over the last few years. And the few reasons why I don't particularly watch the Pro Bowl as much as I used to is because it seems like it's not a meaningful game anymore. It seems like it's just a game for, fans who just, let's just see, how many points a team can put up. It's not a game. You need to make it meaningful. You need to make it mean something to the fans, to the players. I just don't see a connection between the teams out on the field and the fans watching the game. It just seems like a way to say, hey, these guys are out here. They're the best players. You guys voted for them. Let's just see how many points they can put up. And it seems more like a media spectacle than a game. So I have a few ideas and tips of what I think would maybe help the Pro Bowl get back to the way that it was. Number one, make it the AFC versus the NFC again. It's fun to see guys get drafted and see, who goes number one and who do guys like more. Make it AFC versus NFC. I don't need to see guys from the AFC go up against their teammates and all this stuff. Make it the way it was. Make it a competitive game to see which conference is the best. Number 2, let the rules play out like a regular season game. Heck, like a preseason game. I think there's more tackling in a preseason game than in the Pro Bowl. And I get it. You don't want to get the star players hurt. Because if something bad were to happen in a Pro Bowl and it affects a team down the road, that's not good for the fans. That's not good for the teams. I get that. But I don't want to see an offense go out on the field, the quarterback snap the ball, and have 10 minutes to throw. Or I'm just going to chuck it down the field and just see if a guy can catch it. That's not fun to watch. Let there be battles. Let teams blitz. Let's see how the offensive line can go up against the defensive line. Why let a Pro Bowl outside linebacker who is particularly good at rushing the passer, why would you draft him, or why would you bring him to a Pro Bowl where he can't rush the quarterback as much? Makes no sense to me. It's like saying, I'm going to buy a car, but I can't drive it. I'm just buying it. It's just there. Makes no sense. Let the rules play out. Let it be a meaningful game. AFC versus NFC the way it used to be. Seems like it kind of rhymes there, too. I didn't even mean to do that. Number 3, roster-wise. And this is something I can't stand about the Pro Bowl. Let every team have 1 or 2 players in the Pro Bowl. And the way that I would do it is go to every team and say you pick 2 players, 1 offense, 1 defense. Have them represent your team in the and I get it. Maybe a 3-13 team doesn't have any stars. That doesn't mean they don't try. If a team is a great playoff team, I don't care how many times they win. I don't care how many stats they put up. A team shouldn't have like 7 Pro Bowl players. Dallas, I think last year had like 3 or 4 offensive linemen start for them. One of the Pro Bowl teams had like the whole Dallas Cowboys starting offensive line. That doesn't give exposure to other teams. I mean, I get it. Your teams are good. The players had just amazing stats. But there are players on teams that don't play as well, that just play out of their mind. It's insane. And it was great to see some young stars on some teams that don't get exposure as much. Allen Robinson was a great wide receiver. Plays for the Jaguars. He got a nod to go to the Pro Bowl. That's great. The Raiders, the same way. Cooper, Derek Carr, Khalil Mack. I love seeing the young guys play. And one of the ones, and it's like the offensive line is the one where like I don't get at times. Peters has been one of the most consistent left tackles in the NFL for the last decade. And I will give him that. If there was a top 3 left tackle chart over the last 10 to 15 years, Peters would probably be top 3. Easy. But I don't know if he deserves to be in the Pro Bowl starting. And I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm not saying that he had a bad year. But I'm sure you can find 4 or 5 other tackles that had a better year right now. Oh, but they don't get to go to the Pro Bowl because they may not be on a great team. And maybe it's not because they're on a great team. And it's one of the things that the fans vote players in. And that's one thing that I really don't like either. And I'm not saying fans shouldn't have a say in it, but they should have maybe half of the say of what players go. So make a list of every team, and you say you have to pick 1 player on offense, 1 player from defense of both teams. Because I don't care who it is. I don't care if, some no-name wide receiver puts up 1,800 yards. I'd rather see him go in than an experienced guy, an older guy who's been in the league for 12 years, who had a down year, but we're going to put him in because he's been in the league for so long. I get it if it's a respect fact. If the factor is, well, he's been in the league for 15 years. Let's just give him one more run at the Pro Bowl. He's done it for so long. Great. But that nod should go to a young guy that's playing his butt off every single week. I'd rather see, and this is just me, and I may be the whole crazy person that doesn't know what they're talking about, but if it's Khalil Mack or J.J. Watt, even though they play two different positions, I get that. But if there's one defensive position left, let's just say, and it was down to J.J. Watt, Khalil Mack, even though they are on two different teams, if it's Khalil Mack with 18 sacks and just plays his butt off every single game over, or J.J. Watt, who has 3 sacks, who's been hurt the whole year, but it's J.J. Watt, you got to put him in. I'm taking Khalil Mack. I get it. It's J.J. Watt. He's just the superstar. But he's been hurt the entire year, and he didn't put up good stats, and he didn't have a huge effect on his team for that year. So I don't think he's deserving of going to the Pro Bowl. I don't care what his name is. I don't care how many games he's won. I don't care how long he's been in the league. The rosters are an important factor. And if you bring in a position where they can't play to their best, then don't bring them in then. If you bring in an outside linebacker, a Von Miller type of guy, let him do what he does best. Let him rush the quarterback. If he gets hurt, well, then he gets hurt. But that's why there are rules to ensure that a player doesn't get as hurt than it was 20 years back. Number 4, make the Pro Bowl in a different city. The NHL does it. Baseball does it. Basketball does it. Football does not do it. I think it's Miami, Hawaii, and somewhere, maybe one more other spot. Make it a different city every year. Get media attention to a different market. The Browns may not be a great team, but Cleveland, I'm pretty sure the city would be able to put on a great event for the weekend or for the week if a Pro Bowl was there. Got LeBron James in the market. You can you can work with him in some way to promote that. You can work. Every team should at least deserve a chance to host a Pro Bowl. And I get it that it's at the end of the year, and it's like, well, what incentive could you give to teams if they win? If it were me, I would do it the way a lot of leagues do it, baseball or basketball and hockey do it. Make the Pro Bowl a mid-year thing. Halfway through, make each team have the same bye week. No team's played more games than the other. Make it like week 7. Make week 8 the Pro Bowl, and then it gives some incentive going into the end of the year. Maybe. I don't know if the home field stuff can work out if a team wins, but maybe some incentive could work out if you do it that way. But if you keep it the way it is now, where it's the week before the Super Bowl, one incentive I would give is if the AFC wins, an AFC team gets to host that year's draft. And that may not be a big deal. I know. That's not like, oh, well, they're not getting paid more money, or they're not doing this, or they're not doing that. But the draft is one of the most beloved events in football. The amount of fans that come out to watch a draft in any sport is insane. So if the AFC wins, because over the last I don't know how many years, New York's held the draft. Chicago held it last year. They're holding it this year too. Last year's draft was really good. Chicago, that city put on a great event for that draft. That whole week and leading up to it was just insane. But let's just say the AFC wins. And Denver's the team to pick it. That year, Denver gets to host that draft. Broncos fans get to come out, and everything gets to be made up in a Denver type of atmosphere, a Denver type theme. The year after that, NFC wins. Guess what? The Rams are out in LA. You have an LA style draft. The year after that, the NFC wins they win again. it goes to, Philly. Imagine what Philly could do. When the NHL draft came here, they put on a great event. Those fans were getting excited for that draft. Could you imagine what the NFL draft would do here? Could you imagine the fans? It would be incredible. Now, maybe there might be a lot of boos, but it would be incredible. And the media would bring to this city or whatever city it's in would just be a spectacle to watch. And it gives teams a reason to win. They want to win. But when there's nothing on the line, it's like, oh, well, let's just throw the ball up, let's see if that guy can catch it. Oh, I'm supposed to sack you? Okay, well, I'll just, try to go by this guard. And I might try to sack you, but I don't know if I want to because I don't want to get you hurt. Make it mean something, folks. If you're going to put the game on, make it mean something and make it local. Hawaii is a beautiful place. And when the game was on, it was bright and sunny out. That's great. But do you think more fans would go to, New York, Boston, LA to watch a Pro Bowl, or go all the way down there to watch a Pro Bowl? I don't know at this point. But there's just certain things that you can change to help the Pro Bowl make it a better event, a better game, and a meaningful game that allows fans to watch it for a reason. Not just to see, oh, let's see if my guy plays. Let's see if my favorite team's player plays. Let's just see if he starts. Oh, he may not play until the fourth quarter. Okay, well, I don't want to stay up to watch that. If you make it meaningful, maybe more people stay up to watch it. Now, with the Senior Bowl that transpired this weekend, all eyes were on Carson Wentz, the North Dakota State quarterback. The guy that everybody said, he's the guy. He's the quick riser in the draft. The guy that's going to jump from, late first, early second round pick to a top 10 pick to even maybe top 5. And some mock drafts had that. Some mock drafts even had him going number 2. Ahead of Jared Goff, ahead of Lynch. And when the Senior Bowl rolled around, all eyes were on him to see if his stock would continue to rise, if his production on the field equaled the traits and the skills that he has. And when the game first started, I will admit, I was just like every other person. I wanted to see what this kid was all about. I wanted to see what skills he had and how he contributed to the game. And I must say, I expected a little bit more out of him in that game. Now, I didn't expect him to play the whole game, to pass for 400 yards and throw for 4 touchdowns and be just a superstar. I didn't expect that, but he made some, good throws. It wasn't anything that's like, oh, I've never seen anybody do that. He was quick, and he's not a sneaky quick type of guy. He's not a guy that's like, oh, I didn't expect him to be that quick. No, this guy's got some speed to him. This guy can run the ball pretty well for his size. He's an elusive guy, a guy that in the pocket can make most throws, and when he's outside of the pocket, he can make those throws as well. But in the Senior Bowl, I didn't see the star. I didn't see the top 5 pick. I saw a guy that was a first-round pick. At this point, he's a lock first-round pick. I don't see anything happening to him that could drop him out of the first round unless he gets hurt, which hopefully does not happen. But I don't see the top 5 pick in him. I see a guy that has really good skills. I see a guy that can one day be a good quarterback in this league for many years. But I don't see that day one starting caliber quarterback yet. I don't see a guy that you can put in there day one, give the keys to the car and say, go have fun, go win us 10 games. And I don't think any team really expects him to be that at this point. But I think people going into that game expected to see him play, maybe put up better stats. And stats are, and let me say this, stats aren't everything. Just because you throw 5,000 yards doesn't mean you're the best. It just means you can throw the ball a ton. That doesn't mean you can win. I'd take a 3,000-yard passing quarterback over a 5,000-yard passing quarterback if it means I win a Super Bowl. And Carson Wentz is a confident player. He's a guy that there was one throw that he made that the receiver dropped, but it was like one of those throws that's like, that is an NFL type of throw. But it wasn't rare. It wasn't like I've never seen a guy throw like that. And just because you play good in the Senior Bowl doesn't mean you're going to be a star. And vice versa. Just because you don't have a good game doesn't mean you're going to be bad. There were guys in the Senior Bowl over the last couple of years that played really good, and they were like, they're not a great NFL player. And then there were guys that were like, they were that late round guy that you could take a chance on, and they had a really good Senior Bowl, and they turned out to be pretty good players. But Carson Wentz seems like a good player. He seems like a guy that is smart. He seems like he's a confident player. The real one question mark I think many teams are going to have is that they don't have a lot of tape on him. I think he played like 20-something games, like 23 games, I think, which isn't a lot. And I can tell you from looking at, and that's the thing, a lot of quarterbacks taken in the draft over the years, most of them are guys that play at least, like 3 years. Unless it's one of those guys, and I'm not saying 3 years like as a star, they may play somewhere else and then go to another school and then be a star. But most quarterbacks at least have like 2 or 3 years under their belt. Wentz, I think, has a year and a half, maybe 2. Ryan Tannehill was the same way. A guy that had the one great year or 1 or 2 great years, combine came around, put on a great show, was taken top 10, and is a good quarterback, but isn't that elite talent top 10 guy yet. So I think that's what Wentz is going to be. I think Wentz is going to be a great player. He's going to be taken in the first round. Some team may take a chance on him in the top 10, but I don't think he has everything to start day one. That's like luck. RG3 was the same way. These are guys that are rare, guys that can start. And I'm not saying RG3's on that level still, but there are rare guys that can start day one. That doesn't happen in every draft, and I don't think Wentz is one of those guys. But there were a couple of things I saw from this game was that this was an offensive line versus defensive line game. To watch those two lines play the entire game was incredible. And there are so many great talents. And the draft this year for both sides of the ball on the line is just so much depth. So much depth. From the first round, probably all the way down to the 5th round. And I don't know every single guy, but I can definitely tell that there are guys that are going to be taken in the 4th or 5th round that are 3rd round type of players. Because there are just so many of them. And there were some first-round guys in this bowl game. There were some guys that are going to be taken in the 4th round, like I just said. So some of the standout players that I saw, Jerron Reed from Alabama, I believe, had a fantastic game. Was a guy that plays the run well, a guy that is a big body type of guy. The guy is going to be a force. And he's going to be one of those guys that his stock rose some because of this game. He was probably going to be taken in the 20 to 25 range. He might be taken in 15 to 16 range now. I don't know if he's going to be able to blitz the best, but he's a guy that can stop the run. He's a stout run stopper. A big body guy that is going to be a great lineman. And is probably going to be a steal if he's taken in the late half of the draft. Sean Oakman was another guy that I said, I believe last week on one of my shows, that this was a guy that I really liked when he first began to play. Was a guy that he has, the measurables are there. When you look at him, if you just look at the way that he's built, he's a top 5 pick. The guy is just looks like a beast. Just looks like he can start for 10 years and be a star. But his consistency isn't there. But in the Senior Bowl, he made some pretty good plays. He got to the quarterback. I think he got two sacks in the game. Was not a, consistent threat in that game, but made some pretty good plays. And definitely showed that he has the skill to be a great player if the right team can get their hands on him and mold him into the guy that he can to a guy that he can most likely be like. Just a fierce player that he doesn't have to start every game. He doesn't have to play every single snap, but you can put him in 20, 30 plays, and he'll get you some really good plays out of those snaps. Noah Spence was another guy, a guy that people had question marks on, a small school guy. He transferred from, I think, Ohio State to Eastern Kentucky and is just a pass rushing machine. Was probably the best pass rusher in that game. He doesn't have great size. He's not built like, a 6'5", 260-pound guy. He's built like a Von Miller, Khalil Mack type of guy, and that's what I think he's going to be. He can play outside. He can play end. He can play multiple schemes. He's fast. He's just a guy that was making plays when he was on the field. And it's a guy that was going to be probably a second-round pick that's going to be taken in the late first round now. Maybe a team in the late teens takes a chance on him because I think he has the skill. I just think maybe there are some aspects some teams really don't like, but I think his talent is there. And if you get him in the right team, he can be a really good player. And it was a guy that was going to be a good player when he was first playing, but then some things came out and he went to another, a small school, and he showed that he can play regardless of what happens, and he did. So he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be taken in the first round that a team is going to get a really good player. Nick Martin, an offensive lineman. Yes, offensive line. I know that everybody wants to talk about the skill positions, running back, wide receiver. Nick Martin is going to be a very good center. His brother, Zach, is in the league right now and is probably one of the best guards in the league right now. Maybe if not the best guard in the league. And the guy is built like a tank. The guy can play center, guard, can be a day one starter, which is rare. Center is one of those spots where there are some guys that are taken in second, third, fourth round that may turn out to be a good player. But center seems like a spot where you just kind of take a fifth round, sixth round flyer on a guy and he turns out to be good. Martin is going to be one of those guys that's going to be taken maybe in the second or third round that is going to make a team very, very happy from day one because he's going to be able to play day one. Now, for a local guy, Tyler Matakevich. I think I got that right. Temple Zone. This was a guy that I believe in one series made, I think, every tackle. It was like 4 straight plays where he got the tackle on his own. Is a instinctual linebacker. Does not have the size, by any means, does not have the size of a, that star linebacker that everybody wants. Everybody wants the 6'4", 240-pound guy that has size, speed, can do everything. This guy has the speed. He has the skills. He's a smart linebacker. He has a nose for the ball. He's just around the play every time. He does not give up. He is like I said, instinctual linebacker. And is going to be one of those guys that's going to be taken in like the fourth round because of his size. If he was, 6'4", 240-plus pounds, he would probably be a top 10 pick. But he's not. Chris Borland from the Niners, a guy who, left the league only 2 or 3 years into his career there, is probably what he's going to be like. He was a guy that was taken late, Niners took a chance on him. They put him in, and when he played, he was a star. That's what Tyler Matakevich is probably going to be. And I don't know if he's going to start day one, but he's going to, wherever he goes, he is going to show that he has the heart, he has the skill. Regardless of how big or small he is going to make plays. Whether he starts or he's a depth player. Some other guys, Darian Thompson from Boise State was a player that I saw in the game that, again, is not a big name guy. He's not a guy that is going to wow anybody in terms of his name or what team he plays for, because he plays for a smaller school, media-wise. But the guy has size. I think he's 6'1", 6'2". He's got range. He's a ball hawk. He is around the ball all the time. And it was a guy that I kind of looked at and I said, this was a guy that I wanted to see play. Because I watched some tape on him, and he always seems like he's around the ball wherever it's at, whether it's in a tight end's hands or a wide receiver's hands, a guy that can roam the field. He's not really going to be a run stopper all the time, but he's a guy that can play the ball, is a guy that knows how to make plays, and was a guy that I wanted to look at, and I was like, because this is the guy, and I'm one of those guys that I like bigger playmakers. One of the things that I always say is, and this may be not bad to say, but this may be a bad way of thinking in terms of looking at, college players, but a wide receiver, you can teach a guy, if the guy doesn't catch the ball as well day one, you can teach him, he can learn how to catch the ball better every day. If he catches 100 balls every single day for 3 months straight, eventually he's going to be able to catch the ball better. But you can't teach a guy to have rare size or rare speed. That's why I said in the beginning of the show, Calvin Johnson, size and skill-wise, is like one of those rare, one in the billion type of guys. You're never really going to see him again. Darian Thompson is one of those guys that's built like a linebacker, but is going to play safety. Maybe he's going to be one of those new, hybrid safety linebacker roles, but he was a guy that was making consistent plays during that game when he was on the field. So the Senior Bowl was pretty good to watch. As I said, there were some really good standout guys. There's going to be guys that are going to be taken in the first round from that game. There's going to be guys taken in the fifth round from that game. But this leads me into my weekly thing that I did. I started last week, or the week beforehand, my big board for this year's draft. And this week is running backs. Yes, another skill position. We want to see the skill position show. We don't care about the offensive line, which is a really key, important, position to have in this league, because if you don't have a good line, your quarterback and running back aren't going to probably make any really big plays. But at the running back spot, there are going to be probably two backs that are going to be the big names. And that is Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State, and Derrick Henry, the Heisman Trophy winner, the guy that the media is all over him now because of what he did this year. The amount of the stats that he put up and the way he carried that team. But Ezekiel Elliott is most likely probably going to be the only running back taken in the first round, unless a team late with a bottom 5 pick, 28, 29, 30, wants to take Derrick Henry in the late first round. But Ezekiel Elliott is the guy that has all the skills, was a guy that is built to be a start. He's a guy that's going to start day one. He can be picked in the top 10, and I don't think anybody would really care. He could be picked in the late first round, I don't think anybody would care. In terms of, people wouldn't be shocked. If he went number 12, I don't think anybody like, how could he be taken top 15? How could somebody do that to him? I don't think that's really going to happen. I think he's going to be a guy that he can go anywhere from 10 to 32. But it's all going to depend on what team needs him. And this is a draft that I don't think a lot of teams need that. Last year, a lot of teams could have taken a running back in the first round. A lot of teams would have taken... Gurley could have gone to any team. Literally any team, maybe except for like 5 or 6. Of like the known, Vikings, Chiefs, teams like that don't need a guy. But other than that, most teams would have taken a risk on a guy like that. Elliott's probably going to be the only guy taken in the first round. Henry is that X-factor player in this draft. He's the guy that nobody really knows where he's going to go. He's built in a unique way because he's built to play like fullback or maybe even tight end if somebody wanted him to. But he has speed that is unmatched for a guy that's his size. And the guy is a powerful back. And as a guy that carried the ball, I don't know how, 300 plus times this year, just had a Heisman Trophy winning year. And I think that may be one of the reasons why teams are scared off by him, is because he carried the ball so many times. And Murray did that 2 years ago. He carried the ball 300 or 300 plus times. Dallas didn't really want to bring him back. Elliott might go there. Dallas might want him. I mean, maybe they trade back into the first round because I don't think he'll go top 5, but maybe they trade back into the first round and take a guy like that. Henry's going to be the guy that maybe he's taken in the late first round or early second round, but is a guy that can start. Denver is a team that I would look at. Regardless if they have the 31 or 32 pick, they don't have a lot of needs. Running back is a need for him. So if you get him late and have him start, that would be a phenomenal thing to have on that team, especially considering Manning may be done after this year, and you're going to need a guy to take some weight off of your young quarterback when he comes in. So besides them two, Alex Collins from Arkansas is my number 3 spot. Now 3 through 5 or 6, there's not really any great standout guys. Not like this guy is easily the number 3 guy and there's nobody else. Collins is a guy, Chris Ivory from the Jets is a guy that I really compare him to. A powerful back, has really good size, is a guy that can play in, different schemes. But he's not going to be that guy that's going to be seen as like that first round pick, but he has the skill set to be maybe a second round pick. A guy that you don't need to start him every snap, but if you put him back there with another back that can help him, he can be a really good player. Number 4, I have Kenneth Dixon from Louisiana Tech, a guy that was in the Senior Bowl as well, a guy that showed that he has pretty good skills, a guy that carried the ball a lot when he was at Louisiana Tech. Jeremy Langford from the Bears is a guy that I look at him and I kind of compare him to in a way that he's a guy that has speed. He's not really a huge, power back, but he's a guy that can catch the ball very well, is a guy that has speed, is a guy that can play in a multiple back set, is a guy that isn't really a downhill runner or an east-west run. He can do a little bit of everything. So he's a guy that could be taken probably in the 3rd or 4th round. That's going to be a steal. And it's going to be a guy that's, like I said, is going to be taken in the 3rd or 4th round, and it's going to be a guy that's like, this guy fell, because he's going to put up good numbers wherever he goes. He's just not going to be that star. Number 5 and 6, I have Devontae Booker from Utah and Kenyon Drake, however you pronounce his first name, from Alabama. Yes, running back at this point. I mean, it seems like every year a running back comes out of that team that always seems to put up some good stats. But Booker seems like a guy that kind of has a Marshawn Lynch type of skill set, a powerful guy, a guy that's going to be taken again in the 3rd or 4th round. That is going to be a very good player. Drake is a guy that, not Drake the rapper, no. Kenyon Drake is a guy that is kind of a multi-purpose back. A guy that doesn't really do one thing the best, but he does everything well. Yeldon came out of that school last year, and now he's seen as the Jaguars' lead back. He's kind of like that. He doesn't maybe have the size, but he has the skill set. The guy can catch the ball. The guy has some good speed, and he plays at a school where they won a national title, so he knows what it's like to play on a high, pressure type of team. CJ Prosise from Notre Dame is my last guy. A guy that has really good size. I think he's 6'1", 200 plus pounds. A guy that puts up really good numbers, but is a guy that's not going to get a lot of media attention. He's going to be a guy that's going to be, again, like these last 3 or 4 backs, this guy's going to be taken in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round that is going to put up good numbers wherever he goes. Is going to be a depth player, at least a depth player. So this running back class, it's deep, but the skill set is there's not 5 or 6 guys that I can point to right now and be like star. It's a 2 running back class. And it seems like that's what it seems, that's what it seems like the trend is now. Last year, Gurley and Melvin Gordon, I think, were the only 2 taken in the first round. But after that, a lot of running backs were taken from like rounds 2 to 5. And those guys taken in rounds 2 to 5 were putting up some good plays. Were playing really well. That if you go back in that draft, they might have been taken in the late first round. But this running back class, besides the top 2, these are guys going to be taken as depth players to probably start out, but are going to be potential-driven guys that have really good skill sets, but they're not big in terms of how the media looks at them, because they're not all at big schools. So it's going to be this whole draft class is turning out to be a really good class. And is a defensive, this defensive class is going to be really good. And you're going to get guys taken from 1 to, 200 and some, however many players are in this year's draft, that there's going to be defensive players taken all over this draft that are going to be that are just going to put up plays every single game. And it's probably going to be a defensive player taken top 5, and it's probably going to end with the bottom 5. But, there's no clear-cut number 1 lock pick last year. The Buccaneers, Winston was probably the lock, but many people were like, I don't know if they're going to take him. Luck was the lock that one year. Newton was the lock that one year. But other than that, there's no really lock for this year, because the Titans, there's no really huge glaring need. This draft class is going to be fun, and this draft is going to be fun to watch, because there's a lot of talent in this draft. So that's what I have for you today, guys. I want to thank everybody for listening in. I will be back same time, 11 o'clock on Thursday. You're listening to 98.5 WNUW LP Aston.